Good evening and welcome to East Gippsland Shire Council's meeting of Tuesday 20th of May 2025. East Gippsland Shire Council live streams, records and publishes its meeting via webcasting. These recordings are available for viewing by the public by following the link on Council's website. During the meeting, any members of the public who are addressing the Council will have their image and comments recorded. No other person has the right to record Council meetings unless approval has been granted by the Chair. If technical difficulties are experienced with the live streaming during the meeting, we may adjourn until the issue is resolved. If they can't be resolved, the meeting may be postponed to a later time or date. East Gippsland Shire Council acknowledges the Gunai-Kurnai, Monero and Bidawal people as the traditional custodians of this land that encompasses East Gippsland Shire and their enduring relationship with country. The traditional custodians have cared and nurtured East Gippsland for tens of thousands of years. The Council values their living culture and practices and their right to self-determination. Council pays respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people living in East Gippsland, their elders past, present and future. 1.2 on the agenda is apologies, and there are none for this evening's meeting. We now move to item 1.3, which is declarations of conflict of interest. Now, councillors are reminded that the Local Government Act requires conflicts of interest to be disclosed in accordance with procedures set out in the governance rules. This includes stating the following 3 points: the item for which you have a conflict, whether the conflict of interest is general or material, and an explanation of why the conflict exists. So I'll just ask, are there any declarations of conflicts of interest for tonight's meeting? I see none. So as there are no conflicts have been declared, we will now proceed to item 1.4, which is the confirmation of the minutes from our last meeting. So do I have a mover to confirm the meetings held on the 15th of April 2025? Thank you, Councillor Allen, and thank you, Councillor Buckley. So, Councillor Allen, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Good. Councillor Buckley?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Good, thank you for that. So I will ask, is the motion opposed? So I see no opposition to this. So is there anyone who wishes to speak? No. So I'll put this to the vote. So all those are for passing of the minutes, please raise your hand. Thank you. That is unanimous. Now, our next council meeting is scheduled to be held on Tuesday the 10th of June 2025 at the Corporate Centre here at 273 Main Street, Bairnsdale, commencing at 6 p.m. (1.6) is requests for leave of absence. So I'll ask Ms Weigel, are there any requests for leave of absence?
I believe we have one from Councillor Allen.
Yes, thank you. CEO. Yes, Mayor, I've unfortunately got another engagement at the same time in Melbourne, so I'll be unable to attend either personally or online.
I see. Well, thank you for that advice, and it's noted. Now, at this stage, we have some special guests in our public gallery. They are Evie Parker and Ellie Mitchell from Lucknow Primary School. They are here as part of Rotary Junior Community Awards program. So Evie and Ellie, your participation in this community program is commendable, and we are delighted to have you observe our meeting. So to recognise your involvement and dedication, I would ask you to come forward, if you wouldn't mind, up to this end of the chamber, where I will present you with a small gift. And if you're okay with that, to also pose for a photograph here under the flags. You. And we will have, if I stand to the rear of you, and then we'll get a photograph of you. Good to go. That was great. Put on my glasses. Well done, girls, and thank you for coming in this evening. 1.7 is condolences. So on the agenda tonight, it is my sad duty to note the recent passing of Mr. Peter Dixon, AO. Peter, who died aged 97 on the 1st of May, was one of East Gippsland's most prominent and influential leaders. He was a statesman, equally at home on the farm, in Orbost, in the boardroom or federal parliament. He always had the best interests of his community at heart. Growing up farming in Orbost, Peter married Sally Dolson in 1952 before entering federal politics in 1961. He held the seat of Gippsland for the Country National Party for 22 years, serving as a minister under 5 Prime Ministers across a range of portfolios, including transport and primary industry. He was respected on both sides of politics and regarded as one of the most substantial MPs of his generation. Outside of politics, Peter also had a profound impact. He was one of the 4 original VFL commissioners, serving from 1985 to 91 as the game transitioned into the AFL. He was a long-time patron of the Richmond Football Club and served as a board consultant from 1995 to 2004. He also chaired Southern Cross Broadcasting. In 1993, Peter was made an Officer of the Order of Australia for his service to the Australian Parliament and the community. Peter had a strong connection to East Gippsland Shire Council. Following amalgamation, he served as Council's Chief Commissioner from 1995 to 1997 before elected councillors returned. He also played a key role in community initiatives, including helping to organise the volunteer-built Orbost swimming pool in the early 1960s. Peter was deeply passionate about regional communities, particularly East Gippsland and Orbost. He was a lifelong farmer, a community advocate and a leader who made big and tough decisions when they were needed most. He has left a lasting legacy, and we extend our condolences to his immediate and extended family. Vale Peter Dixon, AO. Now, councillors, I now call for any councillor to move the following motion of condolence. That council notes the recent passing of the Honourable Peter Dixon AO, a long-term member of Gippsland and a former Chief Commissioner of East Gippsland Shire Council, and extends its condolences to his family. Councillor Buckley. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Travascus, thank you. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Buckley?
Just to thank you, Mayor, for your speech, and just to say that we're in awe of what Mr. Dixon was able to achieve in his life, and many of us can only aspire to achieve half as much. So condolences to his family.
Thank you. Councillor Travascus?
I'd just like to support what Councillor Buckley said. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. So, would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Okay, thank you, councillors. So I'll now put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. That is also passed unanimously. So it's a bit of a heavy night. So council will now pause to reflect on the passing of another respected member of our community, Mr Lee Robinson of Painesville. So I will invite Councillor Ashworth to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I wish to acknowledge the life of Lee Robinson from Painesville, who passed away on the 20th of March at the age of 94 years. In 1930, Lee was born into a fishing and sailing family at Painesville on the Gippsland Lakes. He attended the official opening of the Gippsland Lakes Yacht Club in 1937, where he was the youngest sailing competitor at age 7. After the tragic boating death of his father at North Arm in Lakes Entrance, Lee moved to Melbourne as a teenager, where he became a shipwright. Lee returned to Lakes Entrance and for 15 years was a shipwright to the fishing fleet, operating from the old slipway before returning to Painesville to work at Gippsland Ports and raise a family. Lee was a multiple state and national champion sailor and life member of the Gippsland Lakes Yacht Club. In later life, Lee became known for his photographic memory of all things nautical on the Gippsland Lakes, his contributions to local history and his regular calls to ABC Gippsland to share his local knowledge. We acknowledge the life of Lee Robinson.
Thank you, Councillor Ashworth. So, councillors, I now call for any councillor to move the following motions of condolence. That council notes the recent passing of Lee Robinson of Painesville, a highly respected community member, and extends its sincere condolences to his family, friends and the broader community. So I see, Councillor Allen, you have raised your hand to move this motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Farquhar, thank you. So, Councillor Allen, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I speak of Lee as a personal friend for more than 60 years. Lee was a community man and the past president of the Lakes Entrance Rotary Club among his many community involvements. He was a yachtsman, but most of all, he was a raconteur, particularly in his latter years. As a shipwright, Lee was a skilled craftsman, and for many years, he was an important cog in the maintenance of the Lakes Entrance fishing fleet. Lee loved nothing more than a catch-up and was a treasure trove of knowledge of local history. He will be sadly missed, but for those of us who knew him, we are richer for having known him. Rest in peace, Lee.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. So, Councillor Farquhar, would you like to speak?
Thanks, Mayor. Yes, Lee will be sadly missed as a mentor and as a book of knowledge that all things come with Painesville. So, his passing is a sad occasion.
Thank you for that. Anyone else wish to speak? Okay. So I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Again, unanimous. (1.8). We will now move on to open forum. CEO, you wish to begin?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to confirm that we have no petitions tonight, but we do have a number of questions of council. We have 5 questions, most have 2 parts. The first 4 have been asked to be read by myself, and the final question by Mr Charles Conley is in person. So if Mayor, you're happy, I will start with the questions that have been sent in to be read.
Just if we may pause for a moment, I'd just like to remind everyone that when those of you who are making an address, you show courtesy and respect to the council, its staff and the processes we follow. We also ask that you take direction from the chair whenever requested, and during public questions or submissions there won't be any discussion or debate with attendees. However, councillors may ask questions of clarification to the attendee. As chair, I may need to stop a question or a submission if it is deemed inappropriate or not in line with council's governance rules or the Mutual Respect Charter. So each person addressing council is allocated a maximum of 5 minutes speaking time. So with that, Ms Weigel, please read out the ones that you've had submitted.
Thank you. And these are all questions on notice. We have no public submission requests this evening. So the first question is from Mr John Butler-Cole. There are two parts to the question. I will read them both and then ask Ms Johnson, our General Manager of Business Excellence, to respond. The question one is the draft budget has been delivered with a majority of councillors, including the Mayor, having declared and announced a 2% rise. Why does this procurement depart from that confirmed and advice that allows for community consultation to be given and considered by Council? And the second part to the question is, as the budget has been declared, what is the relevance of calling for public submissions when no changes are to be considered or introduced? This action fails to comply with the intentions of the Local Government Act 2020. Thank you, Ms Johnson.
Thank you, CEO. So to answer that question in a couple of different parts, the draft budget and this suite of strategic plans, so the council plan, the draft asset plan and the revenue and rating plan, are all out for active public consultation right now, so they're drafts. So the proposed rate cap, the 2%, is a draft proposed rate cap, and we have been advertising really widely how people can put in feedback to all of those suite of strategic plans, including the budget. That's been through media releases, through newsletters, through emails, lots of different formats. So I'd encourage John Butler-Cole, if he'd like to provide any feedback, he can do that either via our website, he can call us, he can email us to provide feedback on it. The second part to the question is, it's not a confirmed budget, there's no resolution on the budget in line with the Local Government Act. That will be presented to this particular council group on the 23rd of June. So that'll be tabled then, this council group will discuss it then, and then we'll move it forward in that particular light.
Thank you, Ms Johnson. Through you, Mayor, the second set of questions are from Mr Peter Jones. Again, there are two parts to the question. I'll read them both. Question one is the declared 2% increase in the 25-26 budget indicates on page 33 that a total revenue from rates and charges of 76.254 million is budgeted, and that represents a 6.6 annual increase in revenue over the 71.536 million stated for 24-25. Can Council explain the need for the additional 4.6% escalation above the 2% stated by the Local Government Minister as a required rate revenue cap? And the second part of this question is, can Council advise the total number of rateable properties in each category for 24-25 and 25-26, and the total billed municipal charge each year used in the development of the draft budget figures? And again, I would ask Ms Johnson, General Manager of Business Excellence, to respond to both those questions, please.
Thank you, CEO. Look, I'll start with, there is a whole lot of different tables in the budget, and we're required to have all those different tables in the budget. That's part of how we have to report on the budget back to Local Government Victoria. So I am going to go into a little bit of detail just to make sure that we're really clear on this. So the proposed rate increase calculation that you can see in that table is on page 40. So if you look specifically at note 4.1.1, I and M, the table that you're referring to includes growth, which is why they're not matching. But I suppose from an assurance perspective, we get audited. All local governments get audited on the rate cap increase every single year, and the Essential Services Commission, as our regulator, does that. So they come in and check our calculation, they make sure that it matches the proposed increase, and they publish that report and table it in Parliament. So if you'd like to, I can direct you to where those compliance reports are publicly available through the Essential Services Commission's website. I hope that provides the assurance that you needed. In regards to the actual figures for assessments, so the table that you need to look at there is at note 4.1.1D, which is also on page 39 of the draft budget for the number of rateable properties, and the municipal charge is shown at table 4.1.1G and H on the same page. So that shows the proposed increase on the municipal charge at 2% and the total revenue to be raised, which also includes growth. Please note that for farms in this particular municipality, they benefit from the single farm enterprise. So there's 970 of those that don't receive the extra municipal charge because they're bundled together as a single farm.
Thank you, Ms Johnson. And Mayor, through you, the third question is from Ms Elsa Hodge, and again has two questions and related to budget. Historically, staff costs were 35% of the rate revenue. The draft budget advises that staff remuneration has now reached 63% of rates revenue, leaving less to actually address the needs of community. What actions is Council taking to address cost containment in this area through full adoption of available technology and digitisation tools? And the second question, when will Council publicise its policy and plan to action these very necessary efficiency and productivity measures? And again, I'd ask Ms Johnson, General Manager of Business Excellence, to respond.
Yeah, thank you. So look, I'll start with the staff are one of the major cost items in the budget, and it's because they're a key mechanism to be able to deliver the 150 services that we provide to the community. So yes, absolutely, staff costs have increased, and we would expect some increase in those staff costs aligned to the growth in the particular region as well. There's also been a significant increase in staff costs over the last few years off the back of Black Summer. So if you have a look into the draft budget and the long-term financial plan this year, you can see the final a lot of people that were aligned to Black Summer funding reduced down in the staff numbers. And you can also see the commitment in the assumptions in both the draft budget and the long-term financial plan to no increases in staff numbers from that point onwards as well. I would like to say though, when we're thinking about increases in staff numbers, all of the Black Summer ones were funded by different funding streams, either state and federal. So if you have a look in the budget, you're going to see an offsetting side. So if you look at the operating grants or the recurrent grants operating or recurrent grants capital, there'll be increases in those, and then there'll obviously be increases in the costs for employee costs in the same income statement. The second part of the question, which relates to efficiency measures. So in this particular draft budget, there is $2.5 million in efficiency savings proposed for 25-26 and another $1.5 million for 26-27 and 27-28. There's also a commitment to a financial sustainability strategy because this particular council group is really committed to ensuring a strong continued focus on being as efficient as we can. That's in line with the budgeting principles of the efficient use of ratepayers' money and keeping services and service levels at an acceptable level to the community. The full details on that long-term financial plan, the full details of the financial sustainability strategy can be found in the draft long-term financial plan, which again is on our website.
Thank you, Ms Johnson. And Mayor, the fourth question to be read out is from Ms Cosette Murphy, and I'll ask that Mr Chris Stevenson, General Manager at Place and Community, comes forward to answer that. And it has a preamble and then has two parts. I will read it all and then ask Mr Stevenson to respond. The two questions are actually from Danny Reidenbach, who cannot attend today's meeting, regarding the proposal of Ballantyne Solar Farm in East Gippsland. The community is not against sourcing renewable energy for Gippsland area. However, the proposed Ballantyne Solar Farm will have 5 acres of battery energy storage system. There are 35 houses within 1.5 kilometre radius of this solar facility proposal. Safety of residents must be of the highest priority. The proposal is located over the road from the Bairnsdale Airport with 1 kilometre proximity. Question 1 is, the detail of the Ballantyne Creek and the construction of the solar farm effect on the immediate area and downstream of neighbours, potential contamination of the aquifer that is directly under the proposed site, and will Council approach East Gippsland Water and the East Gippsland Catchment Management Authority to ascertain questions regarding water? And the second question, when faced with a solar farm fire, we need to have a contingency plan. Without a plan, we should not even consider a solar farm proposal. If the airport is closed due to fire at Ballantyne Solar Farm, does East Gippsland Shire Council have a suitable alternative site that can cater for all current users of the airport if the airport cannot be used? Thank you, Mr Stevenson. I'll ask you to respond to both those questions.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mayor. It's probably important to note that Council is not the responsible authority for determining this application. It's actually the Minister for Planning, so that's an important point to make. East Gippsland Water and East Gippsland Catchment Management Authority will have the opportunity as referral authorities to provide their comments on the proposal directly to the Department of Transport and Planning, and these will be considered by the Minister. So, in relation to the second question and fire risk in the airport, Council expects that the Minister for Planning will give consideration to the fire risk in assessing the proposal, and will also take into account the referral advice from the CFA. So, like the previous question, it will be referred to the CFA for expert advice. We note that the CFA has published guidelines and model requirements for renewable energy facilities, and we expect that if approved, the facility will be designed and constructed in accordance with those guidelines to minimise and mitigate fire risk, including any risk to the operation of the airport. And it's probably, in saying this, on rare occasions, facilities like the airport may not be able to be used because of emergencies. And for example, that could be something like a major grass fire in the area. So there are, from time to time, facilities can't be used and alternatives need to be found.
Thank you, Mr Stevenson. Mayor, they're the last of the questions for me to read out. However, we do have a question in person, from Mr Charles Connolly, who's come down from Omeo to ask his question. So I'd ask him to come forward. I'd also ask Mr Stuart McConnell to come forward to turn on the microphone and then to provide a response.
Let's try this microphone.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome, Charles.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Thank you, CEO, councillors and staff that have been willing to hear what I've got to say. You would have all received a very large letter, but I'm just going to read a couple of questions as asked, which of course all relate to that letter. And it's all to do with the Omeo mountain bike park and the proximity to my property, which basically surrounds me on three sides. The associated losses and problems this has caused me, including loss of grazing area, and the inability to use what's left, with threats of removing even that after DECA spent 4 months driving all over our property after the fires. My question is, why can those trails that are close to my property within 1 metre at one point, why can that not be moved after 9 years of opportunity to do so? Because I've been raising this for 9 years. And emergency access or otherwise to this mountain bike park, I've had several instances of trespass recently. Now, normally we wouldn't care too much, but yeah, I've been quite upset with everything to do with this. The trespass was by general mountain bikers and also some of your own contractors, even after I explicitly told them they may not go on that bit of land, and my father also said that as the landholder. And I guess the other question I've got is, what are your plans for emergency access and other access beyond using Grant McKenzie, who is the current access person? Now, I presume you just want me to talk to those questions?
No, we just ask the questions. And
I get to ask questions.
And then we then ask an officer to respond.
Oh, well, those questions will do.
Thanks, Charles.
Thank you. So, Mr McConnell, would you please respond?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Thanks, Mr Connolly, for the question. As you rightly say, the location of the trails has been a question for some time and was the subject of some significant consideration through VCAT when the planning permit for the development of the mountain bike park was review of that permit was sought through VCAT, and VCAT directed a planning permit be issued that includes the trails in their location. So in that sense, the independent body that's responsible for considering these matters has considered it and provided a determination. There's a critical issue in relation to the location of the trails is the safety of crossing of Connolly Road, making sure that's appropriate, and also in relation to the operation of the mountain bike park as a whole. One thing I have offered to do is to arrange for an independent person to review what's been put in place and see whether there's any any further opportunity to do that. So I will progress that. Importantly, all of the trails are located on public land, and those trails are delivering the benefits for the Omeo community that it was sought, and that includes benefits in terms of the economy and jobs. And I think that's an important thing for us to keep in mind as we step forward. In relation to the second question, again, thank you for the question, Mr. Connolly. And simply, as I previously advised, trespass is not okay. We've taken steps to address that, certainly with our contractor, and also we continue to explore, and I believe one of our officers had some conversation about what other things we can put in place to make sure it's very clear about the appropriate routes, what is private property and where people can and can't go. So we'll continue to take steps to minimise the risk of trespass. We continue to work through a range of longer-term arrangements for access, and in particular around emergency access, but not just emergency access. So we'll continue to work through those and have further discussions in relation to those. Importantly, the important thing is that right at the moment, in terms of the arrangements for the current operations of track, there are arrangements in place that allow for emergency access when required. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr McConnell, but just one thing I failed to mention to the councillor group, it's not too late. Were there any questions of clarification on Mr Connolly's question to council? Yes. Councillor Travascus?
I haven't been to the site, but I'm just wondering whether there's a clear delineation between private land and public land there. Is there a fence, or how do you know the difference?
So the fencing is actually a bit of a topic of discussion, which I've had with Brad Fisher. And there are signs. So there is one point where there is no fence. There was 2 signs that some of these trespassers walked through. And the other place where the contractors went, they knew full well that was private property, or they should have done, because they actually asked us for access some time ago. Due to the less than favourable outcomes of a few things, we said, well, no. You know, we're not unreasonable people, but yeah. So that was well known. The other location had some signs. It's now got much bigger signs. And I've also got a couple of others to put up as well. There should be really no particular excuse for trespass. Like I said, I wouldn't have cared normally, but this has impacted me very badly. And you've all received the letter and details of how it's done that. And Stuart has just mentioned things about why the tracks can't be shifted. I'm not happy with any of them. But yes, anyway, myself and Stuart apparently are going to have a chat later on about a few things. With regards to fencing, well, I now have a much better picture in my head of where I would like some fences. Now, council took away the leases from me. They have caused it such that I cannot use my leases that I still have in such a way, and I'm expected to fix the problem. Now, I would honestly state that I think council should pay for some fencing to fix this issue. Let's pick a number and say it's about 1.5 k's worth. Maybe, yeah, that's probably about it. Wouldn't be any more than that. I will talk with Stuart and draw in pictures and have a wonderful time about how all that's going to work, how I think it should work. The proposal that I have is not really that favourable to me. Believe me, I don't actually want them there. If I put them where I wanted, you wouldn't like it, or the mountain bikers wouldn't like it. I can promise that. So, yeah.
All right. Thanks for that explanation, and also thank you for coming to council to present your question.
I can spend all night talking if you like.
We don't. Yeah, sadly, we don't have all night, so appreciate that you're calling it quits right now. Thank you.
Right,
Thanks, Charles.
Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.
So our next item on the agenda is 1.8.3 for public submissions. So I understand we have no submissions for tonight's meeting. Thank you. And items for noting, there are no items to be tabled at tonight's meeting. Now, item 2 on the agenda is notices of motion, and again, there are none for tonight's meeting. Deferred business. There is no deferred business for tonight's meeting. And, of course, councillor delegate reports would be submitted and should be on the portal. So, they will be included in the minutes of this meeting. So now at item 5, we will move to officer reports. And the first report is item 5.1.1, which is the draft position paper Renewable Energy Planning Applications. So I would invite Mr Stevenson to please present, and welcome to Martin Richardson also. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Before you, councillors, is a report seeking endorsement of a draft position paper on renewable energy planning applications to assist council in providing responses to the Minister for Planning on applications referred to council. The officer's recommendation is that the draft position paper is endorsed. Some key points for consideration are: broadly, state and local planning policy supports the development of renewable energy facilities in appropriate locations and with appropriate operational safeguards and community benefits. For renewable energy facilities generating more than 1 megawatt, the Minister for Planning is the responsible authority and Council is a referral body. Council has previously provided comment to the Minister on one proposal in Power Station Road and has received a referral for a proposed facility at 280 Bengwarden Road, Bairnsdale. A future referral of a proposal in Anderson's Lane is also anticipated. Renewable energy facility proposals are likely to attract some local community opposition, and community members are able to make submissions to the Minister on those proposals. When proposals are referred to Council by the Minister for Planning, we are not required to assess them in detail, but are requested to provide comment. The Minister is responsible for assessment and determination of applications in accordance with the Planning and Environment Act 1987 and the East Gippsland Planning Scheme. The draft position paper simply reflects Council's general strategic support for the shift to renewable energies outlined in our economic development strategy and our environmental sustainability strategy. But it also describes the need for an appropriate community consultation on each proposal, the avoidance of adverse environmental impacts, and the delivery of economic opportunities and community benefits arising from renewable energy development. The draft paper does not commit Council to support or otherwise for specific renewable energy proposals, but rather outlines Council's obligations and the considerations that Council should take into account in responding to ministerial referrals. It is also noted in the recommendation that any referral to Council by the Minister will be the subject of a Council report and a formal resolution of Council. As mentioned, Martin's present with us tonight, so this report is presented to you for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Stevenson. So, councillors, are there any questions from the floor? Councillor Eastman.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. A query about renewable energy projects. Does Council have any say in rehabilitation for solar farms or wind farms and how the land's going to be left?
Thank you, Councillor, and through you, Mayor. So the Councillor's input into these proposals is via the Minister for Planning. The Council is not the responsible authority, so has no decision-making role. What we can do is we can advise the Minister for Planning of any issues we believe need to be addressed in the assessment of the proposal, and we can also go so far as to recommend conditions that might be applied to approval. So what the Council could do as these proposals come forward is it could advise the Minister that we wish, if if an approval is issued, that appropriate conditions are put in place to require the rehabilitation or remediation of the land. Whether or not that happens is up to the Minister.
Sorry, follow-up question.
Another question,
Mayor.
yes.
And sorry for no notice about this one, but should a farm be there for 20 years odd, have we got the landfill capacity for things like wind turbines or solar panels if land is to be rehabilitated post-renewable?
Sorry, Councillor, I didn't get the first part of the question. Have we got the capacity?
The landfill capacity, what would we need to do to cater for the landfill necessary for rehabilitation?
That's a question outside of my area. I don't responsible for landfills.
I'm happy to go at this, and we have Mr McConnell in the back stalls if we need to. Thank you, and through you, Mayor. We're currently working on what along with a number of other state agencies and other councils about what the recycling opportunities will be. We saw this with the solar and the solar panels early on in their introduction, and we now see that they are recyclable, and we are storing them on site at the moment at the landfill with the ability to then send them off the site to be recycled elsewhere. But Mr McConnell, you can probably answer that much more elegantly than I did.
Yeah. Thank you, CEO. I think the short answer is there's still a little work going on into that question. We've got a very significant landfill in Bairnsdale with significant space, so as a last option, I think we can be reasonably confident, at least for a reasonable period of time, that there will be landfill capacity there. But ultimately, clearly, recycling is the parts is the preferred option if that's at all possible. But we're in a very lucky situation, or fortunate situation compared to many other councils in terms of the waste management facilities that we do have.
Thank you. So, Councillor Buckley.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is in regards to insurance for neighbouring farms of impacts of battery-related fire events. Do we know if that's going to be adequate in regards to some of the impacts that may occur?
Thanks, Councillor Buckley, and through you, Mayor. So I'm not in a position to answer questions about hypothetical insurance arrangements. That's a matter for the insurance companies. But what I can say is that there are adopted CFA guidelines for the design and management of battery or of solar farms and batteries, and they were noted by Mr Stevenson in the answer to one of the questions tonight. They're called the Guidelines and Model Requirements for Renewable Energy Facilities. So they're quite detailed guidelines drafted by or prepared by the CFA in 2023 that outline things like buffer distances between fire hazards and battery operations, baffling, landscaping, all sorts of matters relating to reducing fire risk. So those guidelines are in place and they are there to minimise and mitigate the risks associated with fires associated with these solar facilities. We would, as a matter of course, when we make submissions to the Minister, subject to Council approval, we would advise the Minister that we expect those guidelines to be implemented in full so that the adopted guidelines will guide the design and the construction of these facilities to minimise fire risk.
And one supplementary question, Mayor, if I may, and sorry for not giving any previous notice to this one, but in regards to our capacity to be able to carry the capacity loads, I know this is a technical question, but it does concern me whether we're going to have the capacity to be able to handle the transmission lines, etc. If the Minister and they obviously have to take that into consideration. So I'm just wondering how that's negotiated.
Thank you. Possibly a little bit outside my expertise, but I will give you an example. So, for example, and I think, Councillor, you may have sent it through. Actually, Councillor Eastman, I can't recall. There was a case in Murrumbidgee Council where there was real concern expressed by the council in New South Wales about the capacity of transmission lines. In that case, the new solar facilities, of which there are many and much, much larger than the ones we're likely to see here, they're also proposing to put in place a whole range of new transmission capacity as well. That's not the case here in East Gippsland. The advice that I've received and the technical reports that we've seen for the currently advertised Ballantine solar farm include mention of the fact that there is the capacity in the existing transmission network, and that's why these sites, some of these sites such as Anderson's Lane and Beng Warden Road have been chosen, is because they are right next to the transmission line, the high voltage transmission lines. So the technical reports that support those proposals indicate that the existing transmission network is capable of taking the load and simply generating the electricity back into the network. So none of the examples that we've been presented with so far require a major upgrade to transmission capacity.
Thank you.
Councillor Farquhar.
Thanks, Martin. One question. If there was a proposed solar farm to be built on council land and we didn't want that particular solar farm on that council land, do we have the ability to reject that?
Thank you, Councillor, and through you, Mayor. Yes, the owner of any land has the ability to prevent someone from lodging a planning application. So the Act actually requires that the owner of the land is notified. That the owner of the land doesn't have to give permission. So I can apply for a planning permit to build a shed on your property, but you can simply, through the common law, say, I'm not going to let you build a shed on my property. Council owns the land. It controls the outcome of development on the land. If it was proposed to build a facility on council land, the council, as the landowner, could prevent that from happening. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Crook.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. An interesting discussion. I'm aware that there's a solar panel recycling facility currently being built by Electoral in Kilmany in the Latrobe Valley. Do we know if there's, obviously it's outside of our remit and our, maybe this policy and planning controls, but do we know if there's any intention to mandate the recycling of solar panels? And from the proposals that we've already seen?
Thank you, Councillor, and through you, Mayor. In short, the answer is no, we don't know. But it's an important question, and my suggestion again would be when the specific items come before Council for a position to be put to the Minister, the Council may wish to include in any submissions a request to the Minister that those kinds of issues are addressed through these proposals. Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. If I may. Would it be reasonable to assume, do you think, given the extremely high cost of landfill, that if recycling was on offer, it would be likely that we would see companies going down that route?
I think it makes absolute sense for anyone in the private sector to try to reduce their costs, and that would include the recycling of materials. I would say that would be a no-brainer, is the technical term. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, I like technical terms. That was good. So if there are no further questions, councillors, do I have a mover for this? Thank you, Councillor Cook. And a seconder, Councillor Farquhar. So, Councillor Cook, I would guess you would like to speak to this?
Certainly, Mayor. Look, I think it's fair to say, my interpretation of this policy is that it plays a pretty straight bat. Obviously, our council supports renewable energy development and recognises it as a key element of meeting our climate pollution targets and limiting the impacts of extreme weather events and other climate-related impacts. However, as with any large-scale development, there are further considerations to be had on impacts of existing land users, existing industries and the like. So clearly this policy articulates that these larger renewable energy developments are the decision-making province of state government and not council in the first instance. However, it also acknowledges that council has a role to play in articulating our position in relation to any given development proposal that comes before the state. And I guess we do that with an eye to balancing the potential impacts whether it be potentially on the fishing industry or existing land uses such as grazing, or where those opportunities might exist for those things to coexist. So I think the policy does a good job of articulating what our role is in the development approvals process, in that it's mostly state government's role, and doesn't really take a side as to whether renewable energy is good or bad, but seeks to evaluate the individual proposals on their merit, as planning should do. So I have no hesitation in recommending the policy to Council for adoption.
Thank you. So Councillor Farquhar, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, agree with Councillor Crook on that, and also I think we do have due responsibility to look at the waterways and the rehabilitation of the land after the projects have been finished as well. Thank you.
So is the motion opposed? I see nothing, so would that then I'd ask if any other councillors would wish to speak for the motion. I see none. All right. So put this motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's right. I've got the number. Those opposed? Okay, so we have 6 in favour, so the motion is passed. We have 2 against, and we have 1 who has abstained. Are we okay with that? Thank you. Thank you. All right. Now, I see that you are both holding your positions at the table for our next item, which is 5.1.2, Planning Scheme Amendment C159egip, Erosion Management Overlay. So, Mr. Stevenson, and I'll ask you to speak to this report, and also welcome our Officer Kalindi, who has, well, I guess, for expert comment on questions. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Before you is a report which requests that Council seek authorisation from the Minister for Planning and exhibit Planning Scheme Amendment C159egip. The Planning Scheme Amendment seeks to replace the Erosion Management Overlay schedule with a new schedule. In summary, the Officer's recommendation is that the Council requests authorisation from the Minister for Planning and exhibit the amendment in accordance with the Planning and Environment Act 1987. Some key points to consider are: the amendment proposes to replace the existing EMO schedule with a new schedule that is based on geotechnical data and best practice erosion management controls. The new EMO schedule will significantly improve the planning permit triggers and the assessment of proposals that present a high erosion risk in mapped areas. The amendment removes red tape by only triggering planning permits under the EMO where the risk is high and by providing reasonable exemptions. The amendment has been prepared by a geotechnical engineer, and similar EMO amendments have been implemented across the state to improve the planning controls associated with erosion risk. Seeking authorisation from the Minister for Planning does not guarantee that the amendment will be approved. It's just the first step in the amendment process. Exhibition of the amendment will allow for the community to consider the amendment and make submissions, providing for a fair and transparent process. The report is presented for your consideration. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. So, councillors, looking for anyone who wishes to ask a question? Councillor Eastman.
Yeah, I noticed that the amendment only covers a couple of aspects of erosion management, and that you intend to do more on tunnel erosion in the future. I'm wondering when we might expect to see that, because it's a significant cause of silting and whatever, and erosion across in East Gippsland particularly. And the other one I'm wondering is when you might do debris flow mapping for planning scheme.
Thank you, Councillor, and through you, Mayor. In terms of your debris flow question, I had checked in with the Department of Transport and Planning. The planning scheme does not currently map debris flow, So it's not something that's recognised in the planning scheme maps across the state. So that won't be something that we look at unless that changes. In terms of the tunnel erosion, whilst it is omitted because we didn't have the data or the budget to do that component, it affects between 2 and 5% of the state. It is somewhat covered in that it tends to also occur where the types of erosion that we've mapped also occurs. But that said, it is further strategic work in the planning scheme. Generally, further strategic work has a 4-year window, but that's subject to budget and priorities. So I wouldn't see it happening in the next 1 to 2 years, but it could be something we look at after that.
Thank you.
Anyone else with questions? Councillor Crook.
Thanks, Mayor. I understand that the hazard reassessment that's been relied on here relied on statewide data sets and largely a desktop, or in fact entirely a desktop analysis that included some broad-scale erosion susceptibility layers that were often at quite a large scale, I think 1 to 100,000, the report said, and some slope-derived modelling. Do you think these sources are fine-grained enough to reliably detect localised risks, like small-scale landslides or slips following intense rainfall, or, as we've heard, gully erosion, tunnel erosion in paddocks at, paddock-scale sort of depressions, or things like rapid shoreline retreat in unconsolidated coastal systems?
It's certainly not looking at the coastal system. Sorry. Thank you for your question, and through you, Mayor. It's certainly not looking at coastal erosion. That is a separate matter, and the Erosion Management Overlay is not designed to look at that. In terms of your question, the mapping itself is not part of this amendment. It was revised and implemented last year. So we're looking at the schedule itself as a control as part of this amendment. Although that said, I acknowledge what you're saying about the mapping and how it was done. However, it was the most cost-effective way to do it. It's also the best available data, so it's far better than what we had in the scheme before. I believe somewhere around 5,000 properties had the EMO removed because we've had better mapping, which we derived through the GHG report, and that obviously helps us work out where the risk truly is and also take away the red tape. So yeah, it's based on best available data.
Okay, and if I might ask another question, thank you, Mayor, through you. I'm interested in the consideration of cumulative or emerging risks, and I understand the review focuses primarily on identifying existing landslide and erosion hazards. But can you explain to me how the proposed amendment adequately addresses that intersection between climate change and increased rainfall variability or sea level rise and existing erosion processes? Does it seek to understand the cumulative impacts on erosion?
I think like any of our erosion risks that we have and the associated controls and mapping, it's an iterative process. We need to revisit them probably more often than we have in the past because the climate is changing. So this is not meant to be forever. It's the first big review we've done in a long time, and it was only possible because we got funding through DTP to get the report done and have the schedules and mapping reviewed. But I think just like bushfire, just like sea level rise, we're going to have to keep an eye on it and review it as those things change.
Thank you, I agree.
Councillor Eastman.
Sorry, a clarification, I think. Given that it was desktop analysis and the best available data that you've put in place for the landslide risk, etc., I'm a bit unsure as to why the DPI work done on tunnel erosion was quite comprehensive some years ago wasn't included, because that was finer scale than the desktop analysis allowed. So I'm wondering why that wasn't sort of automatically added, given that that did provide probably better scale data than what you've got for the other.
So they have used that background information and reports to to do the initial GHD mapping report and the work we see before us done by WSP. So that's how they know where the tunnel erosion is, and you can see the pink hatching on some of the maps shows this is where it's likely to occur. This is what we know from the previous work done. But the geotechnical engineer just determined we didn't have enough accurate data to map it out properly. I believe it's more difficult to ascertain. It's not as visible. And so we need to do further strategic work in those pink hatched areas to actually work out where it is. That's why it's further work.
Okay, thank you.
Councillors, are there any more questions of officers? Thank you very much for your concise answers, Ms Chester. So, councillors, would someone like to move this motion, please? Councillor Travascus and seconded Councillor Buckley. So, would you like to speak to the motion, please, Councillor Travascus?
Just looking at all the data there, I think there must have been a lot of work that's gone into this, and to me it seems to have taken away a lot of red tape. Thank you.
Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, look, thank you. I realise that the planning department of this organisation has had the remit to expedite the work that they do, the good work that they do, and when there is overlays that are not suited to the geographical locations that they're being put on, I think it's just common sense and good practice to ensure that we do cut red tape. However, I have every confidence that this has been done thoroughly with this report, and that we will monitor it in times to come. So thank you for all the work that you've collectively done. We appreciate it, and I'm sure the people of East Gippsland will appreciate it when permits are expedited and actioned more quickly. So thank you. I support the motion put forward by the officers.
And thank you, Councillor Buckley. Does anyone oppose the motion? I see nobody. So those others who may wish to speak for the motion. Yes, Councillor Crook.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I guess just to reiterate for myself and anyone listening at home, that the purpose of this planning scheme amendment is to consolidate the areas that will be subject to requiring planning approval. So if you have a piece of land, if it has an overlay on it, you have to go through the planning department. It's more than just a building permit. That's a process that can take quite some time and is extra cost. It's extra cost for council also. So this amendment seeks to streamline that process and apply that overlay where it is most warranted. So I think on balance, at this stage, I'm happy to support the amendment, because at this stage in the process, we're really just asking it to go to state government for consideration, and there will be further opportunities for this council and the public to have input into its final form. And despite some concerns, I'm hopeful that that final form will be something that we can all be proud of, in that it will be mindful of and address some of the issues I've touched on here tonight, particularly in relation to reliance on historical and generalised data. But I think at this stage, it's okay. And as Kalindi has rightfully pointed out, we're always seeking more information to inform our decisions, and we never quite have all the information, but I think in this instance we've got enough to go on, although I recognise that we will benefit from more studies. So happy to see it passed tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Anyone else wish to speak? I see not. So, again, Councillor Eastman, you wish to speak again?
I'm of a similar mind to Councillor Crook. And Councillor Buckley, I appreciate that it's reducing red tape for people. I am a little bit concerned that we could possibly create more problems in the future if we don't take account of some of the things that I think should be. I understand that some of those things aren't currently in the planning scheme, like coastal acid sulphate soils. I I would hope in the future that we do start to look at that type of thing, because sometimes cutting costs actually ends up adding to costs when we take shortcuts. But in the meantime, given that this is going to go to the public, I hope we get good feedback from the public and that we act on that feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eastman. So, Councillor Buckley, you have your microphone on. Is that just a...
Sorry.
Fine, thank you. So, if that's the end of people speaking to the motion, so I put it to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous, officers. So thank you for that. See, everyone's keeping their seats, so there must be more. 5.1.3 is the Planning Scheme Amendment C165egip, corrections to the planning scheme. So again, Mr Stevenson, would you like to introduce the item?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Before you is a report which requests that Council seek authorisation from the Minister for Planning and exhibit Planning Scheme Amendment C165egip. The Planning Scheme Amendment seeks to correct errors, anomalies and update redundant controls. In summary, the Office's recommendation is that the Council requests authorisation from the Minister for Planning and exhibit the amendment in accordance with the Planning and Environment Act 1987. The amendment proposes to correct mapping errors, remove redundant controls and expired references from the East Gippsland planning scheme. The amendment improves the planning scheme and removes red tape by removing unnecessary planning permit triggers and controls. The proposed changes to the planning scheme have come about either from an administrative review of the scheme or directly from landowners who have noticed planning anomalies associated with their land. Seeking authorisation from the Minister for Planning does not guarantee that the amendment will be approved. Like the previous item, it's just the first step in the amendment process. Exhibition of the amendment will include direct contact with all landowners and also allow for the community to consider the amendment and make submissions, providing for a fair and transparent process. The report is presented to you for your consideration. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Stevenson. So, councillors, questions on this item? Oh, teasing them out. Thank you, Councillor Crook.
Just for my own peace of mind, I'm trying to think of an analogy here. Is this planning scheme amendment similar to clearing the cache on one's computer?
Yes, or removing the duplication on the contacts in your iPhone.
Yeah.
Yes,
very good.
It's really just administrative. It's tidying up areas where Crown land is zoned as if it's private, or heritage property has been subdivided and the heritage bit is no longer heritage or no longer in the heritage overlay. So it really is just a tidy up, just as you suggested. Yeah.
Thank you for the clarity.
And it benefits every single one of those 133 landowners, because that means that they've actually got the correct zoning on their property and they don't have to apply for a planning permit for a shed or whatever it might be.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other questions, councillors? Okay, I'll call somebody to move the motion. Councillor Davis, and the seconder is Councillor Allen. So, Councillor Davis, you wish to speak to this item, please?
No, thanks, Mayor.
That was very quick. Couldn't have done better myself. Councillor Allen.
Well, there's really not much to say except that occasionally it's a good idea to clear out the junk drawer and sort things out, and I think it's probably timely here.
No, I think so too, and thank you to the officers for doing this. Does anyone else wish to speak for or against? I see no one, so we'll put this to the vote too. Councillors, all those in favour? Again, unanimous. Officers? Aha. 5.1.4. Thank you. Thank you. Kalindy, thank you very much. This is the proposed new pool and spa barrier compliance inspections fee. Mr Stevenson, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Councillors, before you is a report seeking endorsement for the introduction of a new service to undertake pool and spa barrier inspections. The officer's recommendation is that the Council approves the introduction of a pool and spa safety barrier compliance inspections as a service offered by the Building Services team and approves the fee of $385 for pool and spa safety barrier compliance inspections. Some points for consideration are Council's role in the registration and approval of pool and spa fences came about as a result of changes to the building regulations in 2019. The owners of swimming pools and outdoor spas are required to register the pool or spa with Council, organise an inspection and submit a certificate of barrier compliance, which is renewed every 4 years. Until now, the inspections have been carried out by private building inspectors. However, there is limited local capacity. We have only 2 providers at the moment, and a waiting period for the inspections can take a while. It's also worth noting we have engaged with those providers about this proposal. Council currently has 1,578 pools on our database, so it's reasonably significant. Council's Building Services team can provide this service to the community with no financial impact to Council, offering choice to users at a competitive cost. The proposed service will provide a benefit to the community and will not unduly compete with the private service. There is no compulsion to use the Council-provided service. This report is presented for your consideration. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Stevenson. So, councillors, Councillor Reisman, I saw you going for the buzzer.
Oh, just a curiosity question. Would people be expected to have an inspection every 4 years?
Thanks, Councillor, and through you, Mayor, yes. The requirement is that we renew the compliance certificate every 4 years, and that requires the inspection and for us to register that it's been inspected and it complies. So it's only once every 4 years, so it's not an overly onerous requirement. And as you've noticed in the report, often people will say, well, I've got rid of the pool. So when they get the letter, they say, I haven't got a swimming pool anymore, and that's sorted out. But yeah, it's only once every 4 years, so it's not too much of a burden on people.
Sorry, follow-up question to that. If compliance isn't in place, do we have any enforcement capacity?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, indeed, a very timely question. We're currently enforcing 4 non-compliance issues. So I hear conversations outside my office from our friendly staff explaining to people why it's important that they have their pool fence in place. And usually the customers go, oh, okay, I get it, I'll lodge the form. We have some people who choose not to and say that they think it's bureaucratic overkill, and they refuse to get the compliance certificate. As this is one of the few matters in my area that's actually a question of life or death, we enforce. So we currently have 4 enforcement issues. We just carried out a title search yesterday on 4 of those properties in order to take legal action against those people who have refused to have their pool fence registered.
Thank you.
Good. Councillor Buckley.
Yes, thank you very much. My question relates to the fee. It's broken down here that it's a $385 fee, which will include first inspection, initial report, 1 follow-up inspection, issue of certificate of barrier compliance and lodgement on council database. Is that the initial process, or does that have to happen every 3 or 4 years that you've just stated?
Thank you, Councillor, and through you, Mayor, yes, that's the process every 4 years. So every 4 years we write a letter to those 1,400 odd people, tell them that their renewal is up and that they need to lodge their form. We carry out the inspection, or until now it's been a private building inspector, issue the certificate and lodge it on the database. All of that happens once every 4 years for every property with a pool or spa.
Just seeking some clarification, is it, if the first inspection's done and then a report's given and there doesn't need any, it complies, why is there one further follow-up inspection and couldn't there be a reduction in the fee if that follow-up inspection wasn't required?
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mayor. I guess so. We try to keep it as simple as possible. So the follow-up inspection is obviously there. Often we will inspect a pool barrier and it won't be up to scratch. And so we'll have to tell the landowner that they need to fix a panel or whatever it might be, put something back in place that's been removed. That's thus the need for the follow-up inspection if that's the case. We could look at providing a slight discount if that second inspection wasn't required. We do just try to keep it as simple as we can with a flat fee. And when you look at it, $385 is pretty good value for money for the work that's done. I think that the private certification is $700 or $800. So we're actually proposing something that's far more cost effective for the owner. But we could, I think, without changing the recommendation, I'd certainly be happy to talk to my staff about how we could offer a slight discount for those cases where a follow-up isn't required.
Yeah, look, I suggest that that would be a step forward if the councillors largely support that and it doesn't require an amendment to this particular motion. I'd strongly suggest that. So I'm looking for guidance, Mayor.
I might ask governance if that's just something that will be looked at in the future if this is passed. There's no requirement to amend it for a discount.
So why this is coming to council in this form is because it's a new service. Then we would bring it to council every year as part of our fees and services that are considered by council. So then when the team have tested it for a little while, if they're finding that most of the people don't need a second follow-up inspection, we could bring a reduced or a reduction to council as part of the setting of the fees and charges on an annual basis.
That's not exactly what I was suggesting. I was suggesting that we make that follow-up inspection, we redact that from the beginning.
I think we need to find out whether we need them or not through you, Mayor, and then we can determine whether we do. If we don't need them, then we can bring a supplementary report to you to bring a reduced fee in. I think because this is a new service, we don't really know how many of those there would be. I'd suggest that there's some, as we've heard, there's some ability to be lenient in the way we apply the fee, but at this stage, rather than modify the fee on in the meeting, I'd prefer we went back and looked at some data and worked out how many times we needed to do a follow-up inspection and how many we didn't, and then we can modify the fee either during the year or annually when we set our fees and charges.
So just to seek clarification on what you're saying, CEO, is that in the first initial instance, each 1,000 plus applicants will have to wear the secondary follow-up fee, even though it's been declared on the first visitation that it's not necessary because it's compliant. Is that what you're saying?
Just for clarification, Councillor, and through you, Mayor, we do this on a rolling basis, so we don't go out to the 1,400 people every 4 years. We stagger it. Every year it's 350 odd, so that it's a staggered workload. Otherwise, it would all happen in 1 year. So that we're talking about 350 odd properties. Each year when the council, as the CEO has mentioned, each year when the council adopts its budget, it adopts the schedule of fees for these various services. So my suggestion would be that we have a look how we go in the first year. If it turns out that there are hardly any second inspections, then when we come back to budget time next year, we could include a little tweaking of the fee to allow for a reduction in those cases.
Yeah, look, thank you. I just think it's a little bit unfair on those first 380 people that get copped with the full compliance fee. So that's just my personal opinion. I'll be guided by the administrative processes. But
if I may, when setting a fee for the first time through you, Mayor, there is a little bit of working it out as we go. The team have looked at what the private sector are charging, and have understood because the private sector is very busy, they have other work that they're needing to do. There is a considerable cost associated with having the private sector undertake this. So I guess if we look at it this way, by bringing it in-house, we're already bringing significant savings to those who require an inspection, and we can further look at that as we continue on.
Yeah, and I certainly want to acknowledge the importance of this work and the safety for children. I think it's just an imperative, so it wasn't anything to do with that. It was just thinking about, you know, people's pockets when we're faced with, you know, such high costs of living, etc. Thank you.
Councillor Farquhar.
Martin, just a technical question. The pool rules have changed dramatically over the last 20-odd years. So do we go in as respect to the original planning and approvals that were done, or do you go in and we say, well, these are the new rules, these pools now have to comply with the new rules?
Thank you, Councillor Farquhar, and through you, Mayor, yes, the new rules apply. So this was kind of sprung on us in 2019. Yep. The state government decided that it would give local government the responsibility for inspecting pool barrier fences, and they didn't give us any money to go with it. So it was a new service. The rules have changed indeed, although I think for a very long time there's been a need to fence a pool, but the compliance requirements, as in the height of the fence and the gaps between the bars and all that sort of thing. But basically the rules as of the day apply. Someone can't argue that they put the fence in 20 years ago when the rules were different and they shouldn't have to comply with today's rules. And I think we all understand there's a very good reason for that, is that some pool fences don't do the job that they're required. And as an aside, you'd be interested to know that if you've got a paddle pool more than 18 inches deep, you need a fence around it because children drown in them. So yeah, with a bit like seatbelts, if the standards are increased for safety, then the standards are increased, and you can't argue that you built something according to the old standard. But look, it's not that much of a requirement for people to have a compliant pool fence. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. May I ask a question from the chair? So you said that there are private businesses that do these checks, but does council itself hold the database of all the pool and spa owners, in that we keep a check on when the 4 years is up, so we cover off everybody, and then it's up to them whom they may ask to do the compliance checks?
Thanks, Mayor, and through you. Yes, we keep the database. So we send out the letters, require people to notify us that they've still got a pool. We register that on our database. We then say to them, go out and get a private inspector to inspect it and fill these forms out and lodge it with us. And so, yeah, the system is that we manage the database. Of course, there may be people out there with pools that aren't registered, but usually they are, particularly in-ground pools, etc., because you often need a building permit for those pools. So we keep the database, and the private side of it is simply that we give until now, we give the owner of the pool some details which are on our website about who carries out the inspections. What we'll do from this point onwards, we'll be able to do is to say you can either go to one of those providers or you can get the council to do the inspection for you. But yes, we do manage the database. Yep.
Good, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, if there are no more questions, would somebody like to move the motion, please? Councillor Allen, thank you. A seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Crook. So, Councillor Allen, would you like to speak to this? Thank you.
Look, I think as it sets out in the report, there's only a couple of providers that struggle to handle the caseload, and I think if we can make it easier for people to comply, then they will comply. I think that the fee is set well below what people are probably paying, and from my experience with surveys and all sorts of things, if the person who's doing the inspection has to come back, you have to pay again. So I think that schedule of fees is actually very, very generous. So I have no hesitation in commending the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Crook.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Look, in the 19 years from the year 2000 to 2019, 27 young children drowned in Victorian private swimming pools and spas. In at least 20 of those cases, the contributing factor was non-compliance of safety barriers. So we know that non-compliant safety barriers are causal in particularly young people losing their lives. This is a welcome initiative from council to not only improve community safety, but to do it on a cost-neutral basis to council. That also provides an additional service for pool owners, which will make it easier for them to access that service and improve safety in the long run. So it's a great initiative. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Dare I ask, does anyone oppose the motion? I see nobody. Anyone else wish to speak for it? Thanks, Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, look, thank you. I concur with Councillor Crook's sentiments. I also look forward to seeing data that will be able to assist us in compliance also, as well as whether we can give a reduction to those who are compliant, not requiring a second inspection into the future. So I commend the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. So I see no more hands up, so I'll put this to the vote. All those in favour? That is also unanimous. Thank you, officers.
Thanks, Councillor.
Thanks, Mr. Richardson. You don't get to leave just yet, do you? So this next report, item 5.1.5, is our Agricultural Sector Advisory Committee confirmed minutes on the 6th of February 2025 and a new member appointment. So, Mr. Stevenson, would you like to speak and advise us? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Before you is a report which seeks Council approval to appoint 7 industry representatives to fill vacancies on the Agricultural Sector Advisory Committee. Also seeks your approval of administrative revision to the ASAC Charter and the inclusion of the Gippsland Agricultural Group as an organisation representative. In addition, this report provides Council with the confirmed minutes of the Agricultural Sector Advisory Committee meeting that was held on Thursday, the 6th of February 2025. Some points for consideration are ASAC comprises of 16 members comprising 2 councillors, 3 partner organisation representatives and 11 industry members. 8 of the current industry members' 4-year term expires on the 30th of June 2025. Revision of the Charter proposed to include Gippsland Agricultural Group as a partner organisation alongside Agricultural Victoria, Food and Fibre Gippsland and the EG East Gippsland CMA. Industry representation would be adjusted to 10 members from the 11 to 10. An expression of interest process for new members was undertaken. An overview of the applicants and their background is provided in confidential attachment 3. Following the resignation of Councillor Travaskis, it is proposed to seek the appointment of a new councillor representative also. Prue McTaggart, Manager of Economic Development, is here with me tonight if there's any questions. So this report is presented for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome, Prue. So, councillors, questions of officers on this item? It must be very clear and very concise of what we wish for. So, no questions? So we'll move. Oh, just as I was about to put the hammer down, one question. Councillor Crook.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Prue. I know in the past our council has been challenged by getting good geographic representation from our agricultural sector. Do you think these proposed appointments go any way to addressing that?
Thanks for the question, and through you, Mayor. I think, it does give a spread from kind of Orbost, Lindenow up to the high country. Obviously, there are some missing elements from further far east. We have in past had representation from Mallacoota, but on occasion the tyranny of distance is a bit of a challenge. But we generally do have pretty good industry representation across. We've got a current standing member from the fishing industry, across horticulture, beef, sheep, and a range of other different agricultural pursuits as well.
No other questions? Thank you, councillors. So the next, well, firstly, there is a recommendation in the report, and Part 7 of the recommendation requires the nomination of a councillor to the Agriculture Sector Advisory Committee, and it just so happens we have one that we prepared earlier. So, yes.
Mayor, through you, I'd like to nominate Councillor Barry Davis.
Thank you for that nomination. Councillor Davis, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, Mayor, I do. Thank you.
So with that, I will now call on any councillor to move the motion as outlined in the report, and I see that the blank has been filled. So Councillor Davis's name is now on this resolution. So to move this item, anyone wish to? Councillor Daraskis, thank you very much, and a seconder, please. Councillor Buckley. So, Councillor Daraskis, you got something to say about this very, very good committee that Council has formed?
Yes, I think Councillor Davis would be very good. He has a unique position where he's lived in the country, knows all about the land, but also lives in the city. So I think he's an excellent choice.
Thank you. Councillor Buckley?
Yes, I concur. I think Barry will do a terrific job. And I also must comment about the invaluable feedback, guidance, and also work that's done by the Agricultural Committee and the officers that are part of that. You know, it is just an amazing part of our region that provides so much of our economic viability, and it's really important to engage with the problems that they're having, and especially at this time of drought, and I'll be speaking to that later on in the meeting. So I have no problems commending this motion, and certainly acknowledging the many things that have been raised in their report, and I thank the Agricultural Committee for that feedback. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Buckley. Before, I'll just ask, does anyone wish to speak against this motion? I see nobody. So, Councillor Allen, you wish to speak for it?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to say thank you to Barry for accepting the nomination, but also to the other people that have nominated to fill the positions on the committee, because without their input and support, there wouldn't be a committee. So to everyone that's nominated, thank you.
Thanks very much. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Eastman?
Yeah, I'd like to congratulate the people who run the Agricultural Committee. It is certainly an excellent one. It's got a lot of substance, and I'd like to thank the outgoing members for their contribution to date, and look forward to seeing new ones coming on from a broad range of industries and from right across the region, or as far as we can. So thank you.
Good, thank you. And I also concur. It's been the committee's been around for around about 6 years or so, 6 or 7 years, and it's they do contribute 4 meetings a year. They do contribute to how council makes decisions in terms of agriculture, which is a very big part of our economy. So I do concur with everyone what they've spoken about tonight, so thank you. All right, so we'll no more people wishing to speak, so I'll just put this to the vote also. So all those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Unanimous again. Thank you. Right, we have. You are relieved of your seat, Mr. Stevenson, after a long stint. And welcome, Ms. Johnson. And And just to point out that Councillor Buckley's just left the chamber for a short moment, but I think we can proceed. So, and welcome to the chamber, Liz. Good to see you. So this is our Organisational Performance Report for July 2024 to March 2025. So I'll ask our General Manager of Business Excellence, Ms Johnson, to please present your report.
Thank you, Mayor. So before you is the report for our organisational performance from the last quarter to the end of March 2025. So the Organisational Performance Report gives you an overview of your progress against the current council plan and the budget. So it includes updates on key council plan milestones, financial statements, rates performance and numbers of payment arrangements that are in place, an update on Treasury activities, and also includes a section on contracts awarded by council or under CEO delegation for the last 3-month period as well. Some of the key progress initiatives, and I'll highlight just a couple for you all quickly, is 76% of the annual allocations for the committees of management have been processed. Stages 1 and 2 of the Omeo mountain bike trail, it's open with 101 kilometres of the trail completed. Again, that's at the end of March 2025. We secured $2 million in TAC funding for 2 major safety projects, the installation of a new pedestrian crossing on Church Street in Lakes Entrance and the upgrade of the pedestrian cyclist friendly intersection at Pike and Francis Streets in Bairnsdale. And the Air Ambulance Victoria patient transfer station construction is approximately 75% complete, again at the end of 31st of March. And Council had worked closely with GLAWAC on several projects, including Jemmy's Point, interpretive and kiosk signage. The second section of the report is about the financial performance information. So I just want to draw our eyes down to our financial performance indicators. So liquidity, indebtedness and asset renewal ratios are all tracking tracking well within target and present a low risk to council. The indicator with the medium risk rating, which we've talked about a few times, is the adjusted underlying deficit. So remembering that this calculation of this indicator excludes income from non-cash contributions and non-recurring capital grant income. So the key reason for the larger than budgeted deficit is the $11.2 million of projects and programs that have been carried forward from 23-24 when the funding has been received in the advance of the projects and programs into the 25-26 years. So the final part in the report is the current forecast capital works expenditure, which is $56.5 million. That is a $33.7 million decrease from the budget. It includes 278 projects which have 76 complete and the other 186 are progressing, so it's quite a big program. And what we've committed to is 90.4% of the total revised budget as at the end of March. I have Liz here as well, of course, who will answer any questions in regards to the finances for us. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for that. Councillors, any questions regarding this item?
Not a question, just more so that it's very thorough. Thank you, as always. And perhaps that knowing that it's in good hands, and also that there has been discussion about KPIs and ensuring that the CEO is right across what's happening within the organisation. I have every faith that she'll be delivering as best as she can, and the organisation will as well. So thank you for the good work, and we will keep a good eye on everything.
So, councillors, any other questions? Nothing. Okay. So, do we have somebody to move a motion? I was going to sneeze, so I'm going for a glass.
Okay.
So, okay, all right, thanks. So, Councillor Buckley has moved it. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Davis.
Yeah.
Thank you, councillors. Now surely you wish to speak.
I'll keep it brief. Look, the organisational performance is so important. It's how we do things. It's why we do things. and it's a service provision to the people of our region. And I think we're in good hands. And the thing that I like about this organisation and this council group is that we ask the right questions in briefings, we get the honest answers, and we really strive to have that transparency. So thank you for bringing this report, and I put the motion forward.
Thank you. Councillor Davis, do you wish to speak?
I just concur with Councillor Buckley. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against? I see nobody. Anyone else wish to speak for this item? I see nobody. So that leaves me with, we'll just put this to the vote. So all those in favour? That's also unanimous. Thank you.
Thanks for staying with us, Liz.
Thank you, Ms Collins.
Yeah.
Thank you again. 5.2.2 is our council meeting resolution register. So, Ms Johnson, would you also like to present this report?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So this report's about council resolutions as a measure of your performance and the information that you need to demonstrate transparency and accountability back to community. So if we think about the period that this particular report presents, it's from 1 January to 31st of March 2025. So there were 12 open council resolutions in the reporting period, of which 11 have been completed and 1 is in progress. And I can provide you with an update that the 1 in progress is actually completed. It was just completed 2 days after the reporting period closed. And you've got 3 closed council resolutions, all of which again are in progress, and 2 of those are finalised. I can report back as well. The report also provides an update on outstanding actions from the previous report, and that update is provided in the attachments. The report is presented to you, Mayor.
Thank you. So, questions?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you do. Thank
Yeah,
you,
thank you,
Councillor
Mayor.
Buckley.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to seek some clarification on the item in regards to the emergency services levy. The council had a resolution to write to the Municipal Association of Victoria, Rural Councils Victoria and the Victorian Ratepayers and Residents Association seeking, and also to the Treasurer, outlining the significant financial impact of proposed rates for the Emergency Services and Volunteers Fund, and to advocate for the proposed variable rates to be reconsidered. My question is what was the response to that? And also, I note that there has been quite a significant impact right across Victoria, and people have united to push back against the services levy. And I guess I feel proud and acknowledge that that Mayor White and the councillors supported this resolution, and that I'd like some clarification on what the response was.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Buckley, and through you, Mayor. Yes, absolutely acknowledging all of those things. The CEO has actually been in direct contact with the people that have been responding to us, so I'm going to get her to answer that question from a direct perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Johnson.
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor. Might I say that whilst we've said we've marked the action as complete, because we did all that letter writing, we went well beyond that, and as this councillor group knows, we started this advocacy work right back in November when this was first mooted as an opportunity for the government to find some additional revenue. So we have been very active with both the Municipal Association of Victoria and Regional Councils Victoria in advocating for this. We've also advocated really strongly in our own right. We've contacted the crossbench in the upper house on numerous occasions. I've met with MPs as part of my role with Regional Councils Victoria. We have had a loud voice in this, saying that this is unfair. Not necessarily to council as the collecting agency, but unfair to our ratepayers and representing our ratepayers on this issue. And whilst we have marked this as complete on the register of resolutions, let me assure councillors that this is far from complete. We will have a lot more to say and a lot more advocacy work to do. I met with the CEOs across the state and the Municipal Association of Victoria yesterday morning, where this was the first agenda item and was discussed in great detail. And we're looking at what our options are right across the state and individually as a council, where we go next. And we'll be bringing back further information to council, because I think that there is more work to be done on this. As you said, councillor, there's a lot of disproportionate expectation and cost being placed on the rural and regional sectors who are already experiencing cost of living crises, and as we've also discussed, the impact of drought on some of our farming communities. So yes, in terms of this report, we're complete, but the work is far from complete. Thank you.
Look, thank you, CEO. And the councillor group are unanimous, I do believe, in supporting you and the work that you're doing, and we will continue to back you and continue to push back against what is an unfair tax to the regional areas of Victoria. Thank you.
Anybody else? No one against? Okay, all right. So we're moving to somebody to move this this motion. Oh, Councillor Cook, good. Saw you. Seconded, Councillor Buckley. So thank you. So Councillor Cook, you might wish to speak to this also.
Yes, briefly, thank you, Mayor. Look, the resolution register is an important public transparency measure enacted by Council to put all the motions that Council passes on the public record for everybody to see. It's about us standing by what we do and saying, this is what we've done and this is why we've done it. So I have no hesitation in recommending the motion to the Council.
Thank you. Councillor Buckley.
Exactly what Tom said. Thank you, Mayor.
So does anyone wish to speak against it? I see nobody. Anyone else wish to speak for this? Okay. All right. Well, moving along, we'll put this to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Again, officers unanimous. Hmm. 5.2.3, the reason we're here. The Victorian Electoral Commission 2024 Election Report. So, Ms Johnsons, you could please present this. It tells us why. It seems to tell us why we're here, doesn't it?
I think that
supports why we're here. That's probably a better way of putting it.
That's indeed part of the report. So thank you very much, Mayor. So this report is presented to you all for noting, and there's actually a legislative reason that we present this particular report to you for noting. And again, this goes back to the transparency and accountability piece of the process to elect the council representatives that we have sitting around the table with us tonight. So I'll just read through a couple of the sections of the Act to make sure that I'm really clear on that particular piece. Section 263 of the Local Government Act said that VEC should conduct the 2024 local government general election for East Gippsland. Regulation 83.1 of the Local Government Electoral Regulations requires VEC to prepare a report on the conduct of the election for the CEO, and Regulation 83.3 requires the CEO to submit the report to Council at the earliest practical meeting of the Council after the report is received, which is now. The report from the VEC was received on the 14th of April, and obviously this is the closest meeting to that particular piece. So the report outlines the legislative electoral requirements under the Act, the activities undertaken by the VEC, and the statistics relating to voters and the results of the election. I will now present that through to you, Mayor, for your consideration.
Thank you. So, councillors around the table, anyone got some questions? Any questions for Ms Johnson? Thank you, Councillor Eastman, thank you.
Sorry, Sarah. I'm just looking at page 45, gives a rundown of the election participation statistics for us in East Gippsland. And I'm just noting a slight decrease across different age groups except for the 60 to 64-year-olds, very marginal, quite a reasonable increase in the 70 pluses, but and the rest of the people seem to be dropping off. I'm just a query though. It talks about voters enrolled through sections 243 to 245 of the Local Government Act. Sorry, and this is probably putting on the spot. It's quite a big increase in 2024, and I'm just wondering what that means.
Good.
It's a hard one, sorry, you can take on notice.
Great question. I feel like that might be a question that I need to throw to my technical expert Janelle on if she knows the answer to it.
Sorry, it's just...
So page 45, can I just get clarification?
Page 504 of 510 on the PDF. And it's the participation statistics.
I might have to take that one on notice. I really do apologise and find out exactly what that statistic relates to, those sections of the Act, and then why that's increased.
Sorry about that.
No,
I just
that's
noticed
fine.
it and it stood out. So.
That's fine. That's fine.
Well, we do have another question.
Okay.
Can you please make it easy?
No, I won't.
Oh,
I won't.
Now she's
It's more of a comment, so...
gone shy. So, any other questions from around the chamber? No. All right. Would somebody like to move? Motion, Councillor Crook. And Councillor Allen has seconded it. So thank you. So Councillor Crook, you'd like to speak to this?
Yeah, by all means. Look, it's a fantastic report. It speaks to the process that brought us here around the table representing our community here tonight. There's a whole lot of intricate details about how that process works is all laid out for you. I believe it's available on the Victorian Electoral Council's website if you're interested. It's a statutory requirement, I believe, that we table the report in this meeting, which is what we're here doing tonight. So I have no hesitation in recommending it to the Council.
Thank you. So, Councillor Allen.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, it's a procedural thing to accept this report, but as Councillor Crook has pointed out, it's a very interesting read. There's a huge amount of information in there, and if anyone's got insomnia, I recommend it.
Does anyone oppose this motion? Anyone else wish to speak? Yes, Councillor Buckley.
Yes, this is probably the only opportunity I'll ever get to say it, but as the first elected amongst my equals, I want to just say that I'm so impressed with the skills matrix of this group. I think as representatives of our community, we've got a really good balance that are sitting around the table, and that's been evident by how we're all working together to get the best outcomes, and that's what the election process is about. The community spoke and they put us in this position to represent themselves, and I'm very confident with the Mayor and the councillors that we're doing the best that we possibly can with a really good skills matrix. So I just want to thank the councillor group and support the motion.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Okay. Well, if no one else wishes to say any words, I'll put this one to the vote also. So all those in favour? Again, unanimous. You are excused, Ms Johnson. Not quite? So item 6 on the agenda tonight is urgent business. And Ms Weigel, I believe there is one item of urgent business proposed to be admitted for tonight's meeting, so I would ask you to respond, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And yes, it's quite unusual for us to have urgent business, but through you, in accordance with the Governance Rule 7.4, Part 2, Councillor Buckley has proposed that an item of urgent business be admitted to tonight's meeting. That matter relates to advocacy for extension of drought support package eligibility. However, before it can be considered by Council, a resolution will need to be required to admit the matter as urgent business.
Good, thank you, Ms Weigel. So, councillors, do I have a mover to admit the advocacy for extension of Drought Support Package eligibility report as an item of urgent business at this meeting? Good. So we have Councillor Eastman has moved the motion, Councillor Crook has seconded it. Thank you. Councillor Eastman, do you wish to speak to it?
I would just like to thank Councillor Buckley for preparing this motion. I think it's a very important one and sends a clear signal to our people up in the north of the region that we are thinking about them and doing the best we can to try to support them. I think we've recognised a lot of the difficulties that our farmers are facing and will continue to face for quite some time, and I just hope that this gives people at least some reassurance, and hopefully we might end up with a positive outcome from it.
Good, thank you. Thank you for those words. So, Councillor Crook?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Look, this is most undoubtedly a matter of urgent business and needs to be considered in this section of the meeting as it pertains directly to some very recent decisions taken by the state government in relation to drought relief, which have failed to include some of our region in that declaration. And I believe there is good reason for us to consider this matter under urgent business tonight, as it's important that we do so.
In looking at my running sheet,
we need to vote on this one.
yes, we do. That's what I was assuming from my notes, that we will actually vote now on this. So all those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. So now we can move to Councillor Buckley's.
Introduce it.
Yes,
Yep.
please. Yes, you would introduce it. Yes, thanks, CEO.
So thank you, Mayor, and through you, councillors. This is admitted as urgent business rather than notice of motion, just because of the timing of events. I know that Councillor Buckley was keen to bring it forward, and this is the best way to do it, given some events that happened late last week. As we know, the Benambra and Omeo area has been impacted by lack of rainfall right through the spring and summer, and we have been advocating to both Agricultural Victoria and various MPs since that time to be considering the needs of Benambra. Why it's urgent, and the report before you outlines this, is that late last week another drought support package was introduced for a range of farmers, and of course it's very much required by those farmers across the state. The area that was included was extended to pick up a range of local government areas and farming communities that had not been eligible up until that time, and that unfortunately did not pick up East Gippsland, and in particular our Benambra and Omeo area. So we feel that there's an urgent need to advocate for the inclusion of the Benambra Omeo area in the package, and for the support that is being offered to other likewise impacted rural communities across the state. So this report seeks Council's endorsement to advocate for the urgent inclusion of drought-affected communities of Benambra, Omeo and the surrounding high country areas in Victoria's government's drought support package, and to advocate for additional support measures to address both the immediate and long-term need of local farmers. And there are two recommendations that are on the screen before you. Now, councillors, I know this is one that you will probably want to speak to at some length, so I will leave my introduction of the report at that and pass it over to you, Mayor, for the councillors' consideration.
Thank you, CEO. Just probably before we go to the next stage, has anybody got questions of the CEO with regards to this urgent business? I see none. Thank you. So, would somebody like to move this motion? Obviously, Councillor Buckley, thank you.
Thank you.
A seconder, please. Councillor Travascus. Sorry, Councillor Davis, but he might be going grey, but he's still got a quick arm. He's lightning fast. So Councillor Buckley, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, it's not often that I speak publicly on a personal level, but today is an exception. It's been months of drought in the high country. The township of Bairnsdale, which sits 700 metres above sea level, at the top of the Great Dividing Range, is unlike the rest of East Gippsland. It is part of the Murray-Goulburn catchment and has received little to no rain for many months. The neighbouring Towong Shire has been declared drought-stricken, and rightly so, yet Bairnsdale and Omeo have not. I took the Mayor and CEO up to Macmillan's Lookout months ago, and they were aghast at the dust, stretching as far as the eye could see. After that, letters were sent, phone calls were made, reports compiled, and meetings held with state representatives, yet still nothing. I've spoken to all of you councillors and to anyone who would listen. You see, I consider myself a reasonably tough woman. Like many of us, we've weathered life's vicissitudes. However, farming has a way of humbling you. After treating a young blind calf for pink eye caused by dust and watching the breeding stock decline in conditions after having to sell off the rest of the herd, I sat on an old rock in the middle of the paddock and I wondered, where will I get the fodder that I need to get them through winter? Normally I would buy hay locally, however, due to the drought, that is not an option, and will I be able to afford the astonishing cost? Tears welled in my eyes and the tiredness swept over me, and for the first time I thought about chucking in the towel, or chucking the towel in. But that's not like me, but I had, for a moment, felt that I was beaten. And mine is just a minor story compared to some. Like myself, many farmers I know have to support their businesses by working a second job, or their partners do. We're subject to variable markets, agents, middlemen, price gouging supermarkets, and a government that does not understand the needs of rural communities. Decisions are not made in the regions and policies delivered from Spring Street that make it almost impossible for regional people to navigate. So my ask today is this. 1, that Bairnsdale and Omeo postcodes be immediately included in the $15.9 million expanded drought support package. 2, to include producers and hobby farmers under 40 hectares in support programs, as drought affects all farmers. Sub 3 is to subsidise access to bore drilling and transport of fodder and water to drought-affected areas. 4, provide emergency feed and water grants for essential stock needs. 5, offer rate relief and utility bill concessions to ease financial pressure on struggling farms. And 6, rural financial counselling and on-farm recovery planning assistance. And finally 7, fund rural mental health support services, including on-farm counselling. The key concern is the limited rainfall across seasons. In April 2025, we received just 7 mils of rainfall compared to the average of 39.3 millimetres, which is an 82% shortfall, following significant deficits in spring and summer. Some of the impacts of this include 90% crop failure rates, dams empty and unusable on some properties, feed costs exceeding $10,700 per week and sustained for 54 consecutive weeks on some farms. Livestock herds reduced up to 25%, and for some of us, including me, upwards of 75%. Despite early efforts by some producers to destock, the broader livestock market is now saturated, leading to sharply reduced returns at sale. So, today I ask the Premier to direct the Minister for Agriculture, Ros Spence, to declare the highlands of our region eligible for drought relief and to consider this targeted package of measures to support those on the land. And finally, I call on the Premier to understand the further impact of the emergency services levy is having on her people in the regions of Victoria. I ask her to consider repealing this tax and instead securing the necessary funds from general revenue. Councillors, as Deputy Mayor and as a farmer, I ask you to support this motion, stand with me to ensure our voices are heard, and to support our farmers who, through no fault of their own, are suffering through severe drought conditions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillor Drabaskas, have you got anything to us? Yes, you seconded it. Oh, sorry.
Went up to Omeo Brenambra a couple of weekends ago. Around Omeo there was a slight green tinge, so there wasn't so much dust, nothing in it at all, no length. Brenambra was just a dust bowl, but one thing we noted was the lack of water. There's just not water anywhere, so I would like to recommend this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Drabaskas. Does anyone wish to speak against this motion? I didn't think so. So, any others wish to speak for? Thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Eastman.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley, for the motion. I went up to Omeo last Friday and met with several farmers from the area from across, and I heard from farmers around Brenambra Way that they haven't seen drought like that in the 40-odd years they've been there. It sounds absolutely horrendous, and I can only feel for farmers at the moment as processors are closing down or stopping processing. I believe they're booked out for 2 months, so we're going to find farmers in worse and worse straits as they try to sell stock, and if they can't sell it, it gets returned to farms and they have to then destroy the stock that they've grown and they've grown to love. I just think it's so tragic, and I really hope that we can get something done to at least show some support, because we are already hearing of suicides and I dread to think of more. So anything we can do to help, I'll be happy to support.
Thank you, Councillor Eastman. Anybody else wish to speak? Thank you, Councillor Crook.
Oh yes, thanks, Mayor. Look, Brenambra, in fact, people may not know, but is actually in a rain shadow. So it's naturally drier than many parts of our region, especially coastal areas, but it's actually drier than a few other areas in the high country too. It has, however, historically been a viable and a valuable area for farming. But like all farming, it has one thing in common with all other farming areas. It needs rain. And as we've heard tonight, it hasn't received anywhere near the amount of rain that it normally gets. It's not lost on me that other parts of the country are experiencing the driest and the hottest periods since records began. We only have to think of other parts of Victoria, particularly South Australia, are also enduring some really savage droughts at the moment. So in dry regions, when temperatures rise, water evaporates more quickly, and this increases the risk of drought, and it prolongs periods of drought too. And any rain that you get, as Ian rightly pointed out, is simply just less effective. There's actually been a shift towards drier conditions across southern Australia, especially for the cool season months from April to October, where some areas can still have above average rainfall seasons, but for southeastern Australia as a whole, April to October rainfall has actually been below the historical average in 24 of the last 30 years since 1994. Australia's had its hottest year ever in 2019, its second hottest year ever in 2024. The recent trend is that 8 out of the 9 warmest years on record have occurred in roughly the last 10 years. We heard rainfall totals for Brenambra for, I think it was April. I have some for May. Brenambra normally gets about 41 mils of rain in May on average. That's over the last 20 years. This year, it's had 13. And we know that that's an ongoing trend as they get drier. These farms and their viability is being stress tested. And it's being stress tested against the background of a warming climate, and these farms are at the tip of the spear in terms of these impacts. So to hear that other farmers in Victoria are receiving drought relief, and we know that other states are instituting drought relief programs, to hear that some of our farmers are missing out is simply not good enough. They deserve the same as other farmers as we all continue to pull together under these continually rising temperatures. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Crook. Before I put this to the vote, if I may say something, we have been trying on behalf of those high country farmers for months and to no avail, and good on Councillor Buckley for making this an urgent business item, and we are doing this in the expectation that somebody will listen. Finally, somebody must listen to us, and I would just say, if not, why are we regarded as second-rate Victorians? I'm very angry about this, as I'm very angry about the services levy, and I just do not understand how we can be treated in this way. So sorry for venting, but that's the way I feel. So I will put this to the vote. So councillors, all those in favour of this, thank you. Thank you again, unanimous. Item 7 is confidential business. Now, I do understand, Ms Weigel, I believe there's no confidential items on tonight's agenda.
That's right, Mayor. Everything is in the open meeting.
I would say that's wonderfully transparent. Very well done. So, it's item 8. It's the meeting close, and I would say to our officers keeping the minutes there that it's changed. It was 8:10. It's 8:11. I shouldn't have spoken that last word. 8:11. It's my fault. 8:11. The meeting is closed. So thank you, everybody, and thank you to our Rotarians, junior Rotarians, for sitting there. I was going to speak to you about halfway through as I saw a couple of rubbing eyes and was going to say you don't have to stay